2022 may have been the biggest year yet for weddings, but that doesn't mean I'm forgetting about 2023. Stay tuned to hear how I'm using Zola, the sponsor of today's episode, to help ensure my 2023 calendar is full of great weddings. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with the Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry. All of this is to provide you with education and inspiration. And I'm so excited to announce that today's guest is Sarah Winward. Based out of Salt Lake City, Sarah is a destination wedding florist who creates flower arrangements inspired by the texture and changing of seasons and nature. She believes that flowers should feel natural in the environment that they are going to be viewed in. She goes to great lengths to source the perfect flowers to complete a desired look, but also finds many of her materials in the immediate area that the event will be held. The final product truly is an extension of its surroundings, her interpretation of nature. Sarah does primarily flowers for events, but also works on installations for private and commercial clients. She also offers various workshops. She is a master of her craft. Enjoy this conversation with Sarah Winward. Sarah, it's so good to have you on the Wedding Biz. I've been looking forward to this, so thank you for taking the time.
Hi, Andy. Yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I know that you live in Salt Lake City. Did you grow up there?
I did, born and raised, and I'm still here.
Oh, yeah? What did your parents do when you were growing up?
My dad was in software engineering. My mom is a mother of 9 children, so she was mostly at home with us. She also is a photographer, so she photographs families and sometimes weddings and just personal work as well.
So I'm curious, Sarah, what your passions were as a little girl growing up in Salt Lake City. Like, was there anything related to what you're doing today, or what, hobbies? What did you do?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time outside. And so I think that's kind of where I I feel really grounded and connected outside and in nature and with flowers, obviously. So I think that did play a huge part in where I ended up doing flowers for a living. We had a little creek in our backyard and a hill with some like wild sagebrush and cactus and snakes and lizards and all the things. Yeah. So we just spent a lot of time running around, and our family vacations were always camping in the mountains.
Oh, sounds wonderful.
Yeah. And we have a lot of beautiful hiking trails here, wildflowers. I'm not much of a skier, but did a little bit of outdoor, sledding or snowshoeing as well growing up. So always outside.
Well, there's a quote in your website right at the very top, which immediately got my attention. I mean, the content of it. And I'm just going to say it here for everyone listening. The earth is strong. It is this unapologetic wildness that pushes me to create in flowers. I want to evoke these same emotions in those that view my work. I want people to see flowers differently than they have before, and not just see them, but experience and feel each piece I create. I love that quote. How did you, it seems that really does, I would imagine, kind of say everything about what this industry is about for you and your place in it.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't set out to become a florist or an event florist. It's something that just kind of happened. And then once it did, it felt like I had found the right place. And I think because of that, the earth is what inspires me in nature. And just like I said, I guess the unapologetic wildness of it. And I do try to capture that in my flower arrangements and share that with people. And, sometimes people need flowers for an event and maybe they're not super connected to flowers. They don't have anything particular that they want. They just know they need flowers at an event. And I kind of always take it as my personal challenge to make them see the flowers in a different way, or kind of have an experience with them. Some people don't, experience nature, at least the way I do, or just in general. Some people aren't interested, or some people haven't had maybe an opportunity to dive a little deeper and to look at something. So maybe it's just a centerpiece that I'm creating, but my goal is always to get the person sitting in front of it, I guess, to engage with it, and kind of dive in and look at all the different colors or the shapes or...
Yeah, I think I do agree that, when you mentioned that people may not have had an emotional connection to it until they're there. Like I just had my daughter, I brought my daughter into Crested Butte, Colorado. We were talking a little bit before we started this recording, where there's wildflowers, especially in the middle of July, the end of July. And she was blown away. I mean, like it took for her to be in the mountains at that altitude and to see all these incredible wildflowers to really move her, and I was kind of like reliving it with her, that discovery of nature and flowers.
Yeah. And seeing how things grow naturally is so important. Not everyone has access to nature all the time. So you don't get to see something coming out of the ground or a tree losing its leaves maybe, or you're not surrounded in it the way some people are. So I think seeing the way things grow and having those experiences out there in the world, so important.
Makes it different. So at what point in your life did you decide to manifest this through the weddings and event industry? I mean, were you young? Was it early in your early 20s or when did this happen?
Yeah, it was. I worked at flower shops like in high school and shortly thereafter, just answering phones and sweeping floors and not designing flowers. And they definitely weren't interesting flower shops. They were like a dozen roses with baby's breath sort of thing.
Right.
And I didn't even really know that any more creative floristry existed. I just hadn't been exposed to it. But I had those jobs because I loved flowers and I loved being around them. So that kind of exposed me to flowers and got me comfortable with, touching them, working with them, and knowing their names and kind of the practical things. In college, I was studying something completely different in the humanities, like international studies with an emphasis in the Middle East. But just
pretty different. Yeah.
Yeah. But just always enjoyed flowers and found myself during that time, picking flowers, from my walks home or whatever, buying flowers at the grocery store and making arrangements for myself or for my friends. And just started to connect with them on a more expressive level. And then from there, it was kind of making flowers for friends of friends or making flowers for loved ones when they passed away that made me realize it really is a form of expression and something I can connect to and something that felt like an art. I felt like I've always been artistic, but I didn't have my medium. And so I kind of felt like I was starting to find it. And then once I started telling strangers I'd make an arrangement for a delivery or whatever, it kind of went quickly from there. And I think weddings was just the easiest avenue to make money at first, honestly. It's harder to make enough money to survive off of a couple arrangements or a couple deliveries a day. And also the consistency, I think, of having like a flower shop style business didn't really appeal to me. I love to travel. I love to see different things. And I'm like a fairly impulsive, creative person. So I like the freedom that events offer, so it's like got a busy season or I can really pour myself into a job and then take a break.
But at the same time, Sarah, I'm thinking, there's still the business side of it. Like you had to put together a business structure, to make this happen. Yeah. How did you figure that out, that side of it?
Yeah, that was really one piece at a time. I just learned by doing. I didn't like intern or work for anyone else or take any business courses or really know at all what I was doing, but just started, small events. We're talking like one bridal bouquet and 6, mason jar arrangements
right.
back in the day. So, I mean, trial and error on making profit or ordering the right amount of flowers.
Or, just a piece at a time.
Yeah, one piece at a time. And I learned pretty quickly, what I like and don't like. And because it wasn't like I set out to have a flower business, I wasn't ever stuck on, running it in a traditional way, I guess. I just figured, okay, so I don't like to stick to budgets. I know I need, my own budgets that I put for the flowers. I need to allow X amount of wiggle room for myself there. And then I also need to take clients that give me a bit of freedom because it's not fun for me if I'm micromanaged and I don't want to be doing this if it's not fun for me. So I just kind of built my business in a way that made me feel most creative, which is what gives the best output for my flowers. So,
well, can you take me through your general process, starting with when you first meet a wedding client and kind of through to the event, just what your process is, including the creative side of it?
Yeah. I take a limited number of events every year and there's no right answer or right number. It's different every year and it depends on those clients. But I like to take less events so that I can really focus on them and then give myself the space between. Ideally, the clients that I take love flowers. It helps when they already love what I'm trying to sell them, and, have color palettes or certain textures or, something in mind about what they like, but then it's really a collaboration between myself and them to develop what the flowers are for their event.
Well, I know this is hard to answer, like I'm in music and I used to write songs and people would say, how do I write songs and where does the inspiration come from? And it was like, wow, that's like everywhere. Kind of,
right.
But for you, when you're dealing with a specific event, and you're working with clients and you're getting do you wake up in the middle of the night and write stuff down? Do you just sit down and make time in your office and you just figure it out in that moment? Like generally, how do you go about that?
Yeah, I'm usually inspired by the setting and the place. And because I work mostly on the road, like doing destination events, imagining or going to, for a site visit, the location where the event will be held is huge for me. I really like to immerse myself in it, see the colors, like what's the shape of the trees, how does the light fall across, wherever the event will be held, how do the leaves move in the wind, and imagine what would feel like it belongs there.
So it just comes to you pretty much in those moments. Like in other words, you kind of have faith in yourself that you're going to come up with an idea when you go to an environment.
Yeah. It's not always immediate either. Sometimes it's like, well, they said they want blue. So I'll start kind of like plugging away at some mood boards or something fairly uninspired. But then, there will be one idea or one something that catches my eye, and then I'll just follow that lead. So then it just develops organically, I think, for each client based on, the location and the season, the elements they want to bring into it, their individual personalities, some story they might have about why they chose that location or how they fell in love or the texture on the bride's dress. It can be different every time.
Yeah, this is my favorite. I mean, I'm on the music side of the business and I'll create, I don't like doing just the typical, a string quartet for a ceremony or a piano player. Like I want to really build something that's different and emotional and totally tied into the couple and not do the typical. And so I'm thinking while you're telling me this that, in the early days, I would be a bit anxious about it. Like when I'd be given a budget, and this is especially when I started doing the big luxe weddings, and I would go into it, there'd be a complete clean slate and just kind of getting into that point of relaxing, right? Relaxing into it, talking to the couple, images start to come about. And again, it's almost like as a creative, just having that a certain amount of self-confidence and just faith that, yeah, I'm going to come up with an idea and not to stress about it, right? And just kind of be in that state of mind.
Mm-hmm. And I think just allowing... you don't always have the ideas right off the bat. And that can be so intimidating when you're standing right there with the client in the middle of a field and they're like, what do you think? If I don't have an answer in that moment, but somehow still need to convince them to have confidence, I usually will just default to talking about something that did inspire me. Maybe I don't know what their ceremony installation looks like yet, but I can tell them, oh, on my walk over here this morning, there was a little wildflower along the path and its shadow, like the sun was coming through it sideways and it had such a cool shadow on the path. And I loved the way it was floating and bouncing. Maybe your ceremony aisle can feel like that,
Wow.
So sometimes it's more abstract. And I think just explaining or letting the client in on my process or the way I see things, I think makes them appreciate me as an artist. I hope but it also makes me, I love when I can see them being inspired by what I'm seeing, even if it's not the complete picture yet.
Well, and also, I'm also thinking, as I'm listening to you, that it's an experience for the couple, for the client to be with you going through this process that you're talking about. That in of itself is an experience above and beyond the actual event.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's so much fun to get to know clients, and some of them you connect better with than others, and that's just fine. sometimes you just have quick meetings and you go your separate way. And sometimes you have dinner for 5 hours at side visits or something. But I love, regardless of how in depth we interact, I feel like I get a great insight into them and how they want their event to feel, or how they hold themselves, and how their guests might, be similar, and what flowers might be the right fit for them.
Hopefully you're getting a moment to breathe after an epic year of weddings. But if you're already looking ahead to next year and the year after that, let me tell you about Zola, today's fastest growing wedding platform. You probably already know Zola as the place couples love and trust for all things wedding planning. But did you know that it's also where they're finding their wedding professionals? If you're not on Zola, you're missing out. Zola has free listings and no expensive annual contract. Instead, they let you connect with couples on your terms if they seem like a good match for your business. If not, politely decline at no cost to you. Zola is clearly built with and for wedding professionals. They truly care. Find out for yourself why wedding pros love Zola just as much as couples do. To create your free listing and get your first few connections for free, go to zola.com/Andy. That's ZOLA.com/Andy. Can you tell a story or two with some specifics, about, a particular site or venue or environment that you went into, and maybe a little bit about how it went with the couple and what the specific kind of flower, like what you came up with? Can you think of something that comes to mind when I ask that?
Yeah, let's see. I have this wonderful client whose event was just a couple months ago, who grew up going to summer camp in the area where her wedding was going to be held. And she talked about how she would be camping there all summer and loved just being in the nature, being down close next to the sagebrush and looking at the little bugs crawling up the branches. And she loved the way, the sagebrush, that light silvery blue-green color would light up, at the sunset. And she just described so beautifully the surroundings and what she loved about them. And I think in a way that I also look at my environment, I love looking at the large scale shapes, which are sometimes harsh or, really exaggerated, but then kind of focusing in closer, really up small in that same environment and looking at the tiny textures or the bugs, say, living in it. So anyways, we had this bride describe what she loved about the nature where her event was going to be held. And that was really her only inspiration, just the wildness of the earth there. And, but she described the textures and the colors in such a way that I immediately could kind of see the color palette for her event. And she wanted a meadow for her ceremony. She wanted to just be in a wildflower meadow, which would be amazing if we all could be in wildflower meadows. Yeah. But of course, I'm the florist. I have to create the wildflower meadow. But just talking to her was so amazing because I could see what she liked about the meadows. And then we created a meadow for her that was subtle, blues and greens that just kind of bounced off the colors of the landscape naturally. And it wasn't super ornate, or it didn't have clusters of flowers. It didn't feel like flowers that decorated an aisle. It just felt like a meadow magically surrounded them for their ceremony.
Sounds wonderful.
It was so nice.
Yeah. What is, I imagine, I'm sure you've had various challenges that come up, in the moment. Can you describe maybe a real big one and how you overcame it?
Oh, let's see. I feel like weather is always our biggest challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially because I'm often working, on a ranch or at the top of a mountain or some desert cliff. So we've just got wind and sun or rain or snow or whatever it is working usually against us.
Right.
And that's just part of it. That's something we have to be up for. I do think florists in general, it's like a personality trait, have to be able to go with the flow.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Stay calm, right? Somehow.
Yeah. And it's like we're working with perishable product that's seasonal, and it doesn't matter if we order those 500 stems of whatever flower 3 months ago, they might not show up the day before the wedding, or they might show up and instantly die, or they might show up the wrong color. So we just have to be on our toes all the time and be able to pivot and rework things. So I think that's innate, but weather's a thing a lot of times. If we have to move a ceremony inside, but our ceremony structure or the design was built for, being outside and it doesn't fit inside because it's too tall or something, we're always having to reconfigure.
Do you have a particular story that you can think of?
I mean, we have had to anchor down floral arches so many times with things that we had planned on and things that we didn't plan on, airline cable, like going all directions. And then we have to tell the bride and groom, like, if for any reason you feel like you want to walk behind the arch, don't, because you may trip over this line that's anchoring it when we have 50-mile-an-hour winds or something last minute.
In my own business as well, I mean, there's been, obviously, I guess we all have some kind of a challenge. Like I always feel like there's something's going to come up at every single event. And so I try to train myself. It's like a muscle to not show it to, like, I don't want a client to see that I'm struggling with anything. And my team, God, Sarah, I remember in the early days, even the way I walked would like, I had people on my team when I used to play in one of the bands who would say to me, Andy, you look so stressed. I was like, oh God, I've got to somehow not show that and just deal with it and figure it out and assume that there's a solution to everything.
Right. I mean, and there actually has to be. And that's the tricky part about what we do for work. It's like, building a movie set, but in one day, and then it has to come down the same day or something. It's like, and there's no time to, you don't have an extra day sometimes to call someone and truck up 30 different iron bases for your something because you need it. And I think that, so much of that, I'm so grateful for my team. I hire like the most incredible people who also are willing to do what they have to do to make something work in a pinch. And especially with events where we have, the ceremony, a golf cart drive away, on this end of the farm, and cocktail hour over here and guest arrival happening over here. Sometimes we have 3 places that need to be all completely ready at once, but none of them can be placed last minute because it's 90 degrees and flowers do not like that. So we have to do everything last minute. It's all prepped. It's all in the refrigerated truck. We have to drop it all at once, touch it all up, have it ready to go. And then, then somehow figure out plan B because something went wrong. And so sometimes I have to say to my team, I'm going to cocktail hour to finish the escort card display. I need you to figure out how to make the ceremony arch stand up. You have 15 minutes. Go. And they're like, got it. We'll do it. Heard.
Yeah.
And they'll just run and do it and take care of it. And that's just kind of the way it has to be. And that's this industry. And you have to love it or thrive in it in some weird way to make it work,
Yeah. Well, that's another point, is that we've got to find a way to, not let it just destroy us, but, if you can actually enjoy it. I also want to ask you about social media because, your Instagram is beautiful and you've got, as of today, around 182,000 Instagram followers. How do you approach social media and do you have a specific strategy for it, for getting to that kind of exposure?
That came organically for me, which is great. I'm so grateful that just sort of happened kind of a long time ago in the beginning of my flower days. And I don't have a strategy. I don't have a person running that for me. I don't post as often as I should. I rarely get the professional photos of jobs up there. And I would love to do all of those things. I think for me personally, I'm a small business and it's me and my team, but I don't have a social media person and someone doing those things for me. It's just, you get what you get on Instagram. If I'm feeling inspired or I have the time, sometimes I'll post what I like or what I'm feeling. And I think that authenticity, honestly, is what got me where I am today. I think people enjoyed seeing, sometimes it's like the good, the bad, and the ugly, or sometimes it's just little snippets of my life. And maybe it's a cool, shadow on my wall. I don't know. I guess I'm inspired by shadows a lot. But I think people enjoy just those smaller glimpses into what inspires me and not just seeing the completed flower arrangement on the table at an event.
Yes.
Because sometimes that's so intimidating, or I think for maybe a lot of my followers, a lot of people who are interested in looking, they're artists as well. And maybe they're not as interested in seeing the completed wedding, but enjoy kind of the process that they can enjoy watching along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And if you were giving a master class, let's say to some somewhat already experienced floral designers, what would you focus on? Like what are some of your biggest, most important tips and advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think just remaining true to yourself, and especially because I see what I do as an art. And you can definitely run a very successful business just making flowers and busting out flowers or mimicking what other people are doing. And that's great. And that's fine. There's room for everyone. That's not, what I do, or that's not what I feel I do anyways. And that's it. I want to make sure that my job brings me joy. And it started as a form of expression and an art. And I want to try and maintain that for myself. I think there's probably other easier just businesses I could run for income. This one for me is about finding the joy in it. And I really do. I love that. And so I think building your business so that it works for you, not only financially, but fits in your life. I started my business and then pretty shortly had 2 kids. So I've had 2 littles with me while I'm building this business and running around the world making flowers. And that definitely wasn't easy. And there's things, I wish I maybe had done differently, but also I think just enjoying that journey was a huge part of enjoying it and allowing myself to love it, even if it's hard, or to appreciate it is what got me here today. So I think that's what I think is important for people in their businesses. And that's events, running a flower shop or a delivery type flower service is so different. And I think a different personality for that as well. So
do you have any kind of a morning routine?
I do. I wish I was more of a morning person. I would love to wake up at like 5 a.m. The times when I have, it's been amazing. But I mean, I wake up early enough and I get my kids out the door to school. And then I come home and I have kind of like a morning putter around my house. It is my morning meditation, but I make my coffee, I make my breakfast, and I water my plants. I sweep my patio, and I do none of it in an efficient manner.
Yeah.
I just kind of like, I end up drinking my coffee an hour later when it's cold, sitting on my counter. But I just kind of experience my space and just tap into myself. How am I feeling today? It's a great way for me to like wake up and also erase whatever I might need to from the day before I dive into work.
Yeah.
And just mentally prepare, like, do I have a day full of phone calls, or am I staring at my computer working on a proposal? Or am I, scraping wax out of candle holders from last weekend's event? Like, no matter what it is, I start with that ritual for me, which is, it's really nice. It helps me start the day.
Do you have an end of day routine that you do?
I do. That one's maybe not as great. I mean, I get my kids into bed. Sometimes I sit on my deck and just kind of like enjoy the outside, but I'm always like looking at my phone. I have a hard time, I think.
Oh, I think we all do.
Yeah, I have a hard time, turning that off at the end of the day, or not just like turning on a movie to turn that off. So I would like to get better at that. I'd love to be a person that like meditates and then like reads a book and goes to sleep.
Yeah. And just go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I do have, it's more of a wish than it has become a routine, but a walk after dinner time, like as the sun is setting.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it's something that I have done. I've tried to start as a routine with my family as well. I feel like after dinner, we still have, an hour or two before the kids go to bed. And we just are fortunate to live on a street that's got like some beautiful nature views. So I have these little lanterns that as the sun sets, sometimes we'll walk around the neighborhood with, and we just do maybe like a 1 mile loop around the neighborhood and come back home. But I feel like getting out there and getting a little bit of exercise is a really great wind down. But I'd like to make that happen more than it does.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's funny, even as you're saying that, I'm thinking, I like to take a walk also before dinner, but it's the same concept that just getting outside and getting away from the desk, away from the phone. I'll put on some headphones with music. I'm not going to make a call or anything like that. And just to have that separation in the day to kind of clear it, I think that's really important, not only as a business person, but as a creative person.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure I sleep better on those nights as well. Like it really is a great way to just let go of whatever the day had and focus on, whatever you might find on your walk or nothing. Just focus on breathing the fresh air and taking a walk.
Yeah. Well, gosh. Well, Sarah, this was a real pleasure. I really, like I said, I've been really looking forward to talking to you, and thank you for taking the time today to do this. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Sarah Winward. Be sure to check out her website, which is sarahwinward.com, and that's Sarah with an H. On social media, you can find her on Instagram at Sarah_Winward and on Pinterest at Sarah Winward. And you can check out the show notes with event pics that our guests provided in your cell phone's podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And remember to go to zola.com/Andy to create your free listing and get your first few connections for free. Again, that's zola.com/Andy. And if you could share this interview with 3 good friends who you feel would benefit from this, and also review it wherever you get your podcast from. By sharing it, reviewing it, obviously we can help new people find the show. And next week's guest, actually there isn't one because it's Thanksgiving week, and I want to give you a chance to catch up on past episodes. So have a wonderful holiday.